I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we are talking about a heart-touching book. It is called A Widow and a Friend. It starts out on the day of a woman's husband's funeral, and it is a dark day, but she is able to find light at the end of that dark journey. Widow and a Friend is written by Stella Stella, and we are delighted to have her here today as a guest on Spotlight. Stella, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining
John.
us.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you.
This story reads so real. It's very profound. I actually thought it might be your story, but we chatted a little bit. You wrote it, but it's not your experience. But
Correct.
tell the audience a little bit what A Widow and a Friend is all about.
It's a fictional story. It is not my story, but it's a story that I had in my head. I write short stories, and this is one of a few. And as I was writing it, it actually started to play out a little bit more in my head as I was writing it because I didn't have the entire ending when I
Mhm.
started. But as I was writing, it's interesting how sometimes you get the character in your head and it just flowed. And that was the story. It's a beautiful story, I think.
I
And
agree.
I had several people read it to say, is this too dark? What do you think? And they said, no, it's a gorgeous story. So, yeah,
It is a gorgeous story. I loved
thank
it, and
you.
I think our viewers
Thank
would
you.
love it as well. Tell me a little bit about you as a writer. You prefer to write short stories, correct?
Correct. I do. And the reason for that, it's nothing really profound. First, my attention is not going to stay that long.
Mhm.
And a good read, long books, A Promised Land by Barack Obama, I could never write that. A
Right.
fascinating read, but I could never write that. So I stick to what's comfortable for me. I just prefer writing short stories that are just enjoyable, that if you want to just kick back on the couch and you're a reader, you like a book in your hand, that's where I fit in. So I think there's like room for, just like music, there's all genres and all types. I think for books and writers, there's just room for anybody who wants to write.
I agree. I think sometimes you don't want a book that's thick.
Correct.
You want a book that's less intimidating, that you can just
Sure.
have an easy read, that you're not
Sure.
going to spend, days or weeks reading, but just, something you can read over a couple of days and just enjoy it and get to the conclusion and just go on to the next short story. So
Sure.
I loved it. I think it's actually a great genre for you. Tell me
Thank you.
about some of your other works that you've written.
A Widow and a Friend is my first completely fiction novel. So
Mhm.
there's that. My original and very first, it's like your first baby, your first child, is my autobiography, and that is nonfiction.
Right.
And it's called Life is a Funny Thing. That one, the intent is to take a lot of stories that my upbringing was very interesting. Um, I can kind of lead with that by saying my dad was married, my mother was not.
Mm.
Um, and we had an interesting, I have six siblings, and we had an interesting things that happened with us. And so, in order to kind of get that out there, because I thought it was very interesting, I tried to make everything humor. I tried to add humor to it because
Mm.
otherwise it could have been heavy. So that was my first one. I also have, when I walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain, I did a journal. It was never intended to be published. But as I was on the Camino and you're in Spain and you're going through the mountains and you're sort of off the grid, and my husband and I were there for about, I don't know, 40 days, something like that, or 26 days actually on the trail.
Mhm.
Um, and all you have to live it is your backpack. So that's what you have for the month that you're gone. And I was sending a journal home to friends and they were like, you have to publish this. So that's also published. Um,
Wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful.
so there's
It
a
must
couple of
be
short
quite
stories.
satisfying to see your work in print, right?
It is. And I do it because I am retired and I just enjoy writing short stories. So I just do it.
What are you retired from?
I spent 32 years in the healthcare industry as a building manager and facilities manager. So
Okay.
I was not into writing in any way, shape, or form. It's just always been a quiet passion of mine.
Right, right. Well, you're definitely talented at it, so keep up the good work for sure.
Thank
Have
you.
you
Thank
envisioned A
you.
Widow and a Friend as a screenplay or a movie?
So that is my pie in the sky for that particular story. I think it would be an excellent screenplay. Especially if you've read it. I mean, the knock at the door, just imagine who that could be.
Exactly, exactly.
So I think it would be an excellent screenplay. And again, that's the pie in the sky for that one.
And who would you have play Tina Mason?
I like the sort of Jill Scott, this Queen Latifah, the warm character with the caramely brown skin and
Hmm.
just a warm, loving woman. Um, a mature woman, but not old or elderly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Who looks like a woman who has some substance. That's who comes to mind instantly, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who could portray Tina Mason.
absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of actresses would fight over getting the role because it's a quite a character. It's wonderful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Who are your influences? You mentioned you enjoyed reading Barack Obama earlier, but who do you like to read? Who do you find entertaining?
So I don't have one particular. I like a little bit of everything. I anticipated you might ask me what are some of my favorite reads, and
Mhm.
they're all over the map. They're
Yeah,
all over the map. So I cannot tell you that one person inspired me. It's just my thing where I write things. If something's on my mind, I like to write and purge it. That's my way of purging.
right.
So it's not any particular person. Um, Additionally, I don't think that my short stories are the same as other stories that are written. So it's a different niche, if you will.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. I guess the inspiration is just what's inside's coming out.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Do you have a method to your writing? Do you like to write first thing in the morning, in the evening?
There is no particular method. It's just, and I'm sure you know this, it's like when you have the moment and the time, I can sit in the middle of my husband watching football and I can go find a corner and I can be writing a piece or portion of something. Um, I spent some time, we lived in Cabo in Mexico for about a year and a half, and it was easy to sit on the beach and write a lot. That was easy to do. So it's easy to say, yeah, if I can just sit on the beach and write, but the truth is I can do it on the sofa.
Yeah, it's nice to be in an inspiring place though,
It
because
is.
the environment starts fueling your ideas. You're seeing people
It
walk
is.
about. You start, inventing stories about them that work as characters in your book.
It's true. The only thing that really is critical for me, for my processing, is I have to have my mind clear of other things. That's
Hmm.
the only thing. So if there's big things going on in my life or my family, that has to settle first before I can write, usually. Other than that, I can find a space in the parking lot and sit in my car.
That's
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. Now, do you miss your career in the healthcare field or are you enjoying retirement?
I am so enjoying retirement. No, I don't miss it one bit.
Gotcha,
I don't
gotcha.
miss it one bit.
Sounds good. Who is your first reader? When you write a book like this, who do you give it to first? Your husband? Do you have a best friend or a mom or somebody? Who do you give it to?
One of my sisters is a very avid reader, and so she's one of the persons. I have a few girlfriends, and then I let my son read it. Obviously, he's a younger generation and a different genre of a person, and I like his input as well. And he actually surprised me with A Widow and a Friend, and he said, "Mom, this is a really beautiful story. It's a
Wow.
really good story." And I was surprised because I thought with him being younger, he might think something different,
Right.
and I appreciated that he thought it was a lovely story. Um, all of them loved it. All of them loved it. I had a girlfriend who said, I'm just going to take it with me on my flight. And she read it in flight and she got home and she called me and she said, I loved it. I loved it. Originally, it was just, originally it was just book one.
Hmm.
And which if you read it, there's a two-part to it. And the
Hmm.
first part is where it stopped. And I had like four people who, of the few people that I had read it in advance, they called me and they said, I need to know what happens. I need to know what happens. And so that's why now you have book two in there. So it's the whole story.
Wonderful.
Um,
Well, it's always good to leave them wanting more.
it
And
is.
so that's great. And it's also wonderful that it's resonating with people of all ages. And I can see why. It's a lovely read. It's a beautiful story. It's called A Widow and a Friend. You can download it on Amazon, and it is a very enjoyable read, and it's highly recommended here at the Spotlight
Thank you,
Network.
Logan.
Stella, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.
Thank you.